Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching this video. My name is Alex Thomas and you're watching the Margam podcast. Today I'm here with Father Kevin Mundackal, one of the priests in the Syro-Malabar Catholic Diocese of Chicago. You may have seen his videos, the Qurbana Explained videos, that really helped me discover more about the meaning and the significance of different aspects of the Qurbana. Father Kevin, thank you so much for being here. I'd love if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up in the suburbs of New York, born and raised there. I have two brothers, older one, younger one. And yeah, I was ordained in 2018 for the Syro-Malabar Eparchy of Chicago. And I've been a priest for the past 8 years. My parents are still in New York. My older brother's in Florida, younger brother's in New York. And so, yeah, I currently serve the Eparchy of Chicago, and it's been a beautiful experience.
I'd love to learn a little bit more about prior to becoming Father Kevin Achen. What was your discernment process like? I know you joined the seminary quite young. How did you really decide that you wanted to become a priest?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the short answer is God called, I answered. But the longer answer, growing up in a Malayali household, um, we had family prayer at home. We went to church every Sunday. So we were like a pretty religious family. But it wasn't like the faith meant anything more than that. Like you just went to church, family prayer, that's it. And then when I was in high school, that's when I started to get more involved with my faith. There's a movement called Jesus Youth, and they helped me a lot. They coordinated retreats, and also in the Catholic Church, we have Eucharistic adoration. And so usually when we're small, we have our first Holy Communion. It's a very special thing. But I guess in high school, that's when I really encountered the Lord in the Eucharist, and I experienced his love, and I experienced that God is real. He has a plan for me, and what is that?
Yeah.
And that led me to want to be open to saying, God, what do you want? Like, usually it's, God, we want this, I want this, I want this. But Lord, what do you want from me? And eventually he put the seeds of the vocation of the priest in my heart and started thinking about it. I wasn't sure if this was just a phase, it'll go away. But as I would return back to Eucharistic adoration, like those thoughts would just keep coming back. And
Yeah.
I started reading books about the priesthood, watching YouTube videos. I reached out to a priest, and eventually I was like, you know what? Because discernment's a journey. You know, what do you want, Lord? And I reached a point in my discernment that if I wanted to take the next step, it would be joining seminary and discerning there too. Because once you join seminary, it's not a kind of, you're going to be a priest now.
Okay.
You further discern too in a more suitable environment for priestly discernment. Yeah.
I'm so curious to know, especially for you growing up in New York, did you feel an immediate connection to joining the Syro-Malabar Church as a priest, or was there a tug and pull between Latin rite? Did you feel like you had to go Eastern Catholic? How did that kind of come about for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So initially, when I was thinking about the priesthood, I first thought about this like very strict Franciscan congregation that like lives in the woods and like they're like hermits
Wow.
and stuff. And I visited, and like it was beautiful. I admired their life, but something didn't sit well. And then I was open to joining the Latin diocese, the Archdiocese of New York. I was open to joining any congregation, but in fact, I told myself that I would never become a Syro-Malabar priest.
Oh, wow.
Because I didn't know Malayalam. Like growing up, like our parents would speak to us in Malayalam at home.
Yeah.
We'd respond back in English, and they'd respond back in English to us. And so the Achen I knew at my home parish, he's from India. And so I was like, okay, this seems like an Indian church. I was born and raised in America. And so I guess for me, Latin rite would be the normal path. But then when our Achen introduced the English Qurbana, that was a game-changing moment for me, because I always thought the Syro-Malabar rite was just the Latin Mass in Malayalam.
Yeah.
Like we sing a little bit more, a little bit more colorful. It's more Indian. But when I was able to read the liturgy, like in the book, I was like, whoa, this doesn't match up with the Latin Mass. What's going on here? And I was able to hear and like read a lot of the hidden prayers that the priest says under his breath. And I was like, whoa, this is really beautiful. This is deep. And then also the last prayer of the Qurbana, it's about the priest bidding farewell to the altar, saying he does not know whether he will come again to offer another sacrifice. And I was like, whoa, that's beautiful. I never knew the priest said that at every Holy Qurbana. And so that led me to like, all right, what exactly is Syro-Malabar? And then I started to learn about the history, the development, and I fell in love with the Syro-Malabar liturgy. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I could become a Syro-Malabar priest.
Wow. Maybe for just the viewers who aren't familiar with Syro-Malabar, Latin rite, what's the Qurbana? Maybe you could just give a quick overview of the difference and maybe just a definition of terms for people who may not understand.
Yeah, definitely. So the Catholic Church is one, but is made up of many different churches that are in communion with each other. For example, there's the largest, which is the Latin Church, the Western Church, which is about 97% of all the Catholics in the world. And there's other smaller churches like the Ukrainian Catholic Church, the Syro-Malabar Church, the Syro-Malankara Church, the Chaldean Church. And these are what we call sui juris churches. They have their own hierarchy, their own liturgy, their own canonical discipline, theology, but they're all in communion with Rome, with the Pope. So we're all under the Pope. And so Syro-Malabar is one of the 23 Eastern Catholic churches in full communion with Rome. And the Qurbana is a Syriac term, which means offering, which we use to describe our liturgy, or Eucharistic liturgy, so the Mass. So we use the word Holy Qurbana. In the Eastern Greek tradition, it's the Divine Liturgy. In the Western tradition, it's the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass. So.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I think there's even some Syro-Malabar youth who are maybe unsure about the Syriac language as well, because there's the East Syriac rite, we have the West Syriac rite. How would you explain even that aspect? Because how could the Syriac language be in an Indian church if Syriac is Aramaic? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just, I guess, the whole history of the St. Thomas Christians. So Syriac is an offshoot of Aramaic. Aramaic is a language that our Lord spoke. And from the early centuries, so it's believed that St. Thomas went to India, evangelized, began Christian communities there. But over time, the St. Thomas Christians in India developed a ecclesial connection with the East Syrian Church. And so we received bishops from the East Syrian Church. Our liturgy, our hierarchy was from the East Syrian Church. We were uniquely Indian, but spiritually, liturgically, we were connected with the East Syrian Church. And so that's how the East Syrian liturgy came to Kerala.
Right.
And so for most of history, it was the East Syrian liturgy celebrated by the St. Thomas Christians until historically some factors came. The Portuguese came and there were a lot of issues, Synod of Diamper, Coon and Cross Oath, and then eventually bishops from the Antiochian tradition, the West Syrian Church came. And so then we have introduced the West Syrian liturgy. And so currently the Syro-Malabar Church follows the East Syrian liturgy. It's gone through a few changes over history. But Syriac, for the St. Thomas Christians, is pretty much the main language, the main liturgical language. And for Syro-Malabar Catholics, the Qurbana was offered in Syriac up until the late 1950s.
Wow.
So only after the 1950s do we have a Malayalam Qurbana.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did the vernacularization kind of become introduced so late in the 20th century?
Yeah, I guess there was always this emphasis on liturgical language as being like a sacred language, as like, you know, people may not have understood word for word, but they knew what was going on. They knew the holiness of what's happening at the altar. And it was Vatican II that after that, the Latin Church moved to the vernacular, but we actually moved to the vernacular before Vatican II. Yeah.
Okay. So that's new history to me. That's really interesting because from my understanding prior to you telling me this, is that Vatican II really shaped the individuality of Eastern Catholic churches. So I'm so curious to know if you have any insight on kind of how that shift took place, because we've seen it with traditional Latin Mass and people not wanting to depart from that, and factions splitting off with Society of St. Pius X and others. But for the Syro-Malabar Catholics, was it an easier transition? Were people more excited, or were there conservatives who wanted to remain in Syriac as the language of the liturgy?
Yeah. So from what I've heard, the transition, because it was Syriac for centuries, like
Yeah.
your ancestors were celebrating the liturgy in this language.
Right.
And I know there was a lot of pushback from people. It's like,
Yeah.
we don't need the vernacular. I know there's one Achen that he had joined seminary around that time when it was being transitioning into the vernacular. And his dad came to visit him in the seminary and made him promise that he would never offer this Malayalam Qurbana.
Oh.
Yeah. So there were people who were really passionate about that because that's all they knew for all this time. And it was not an easy transition. But eventually it was able to transition.
Yeah.
But it's funny is because nowadays in America, we have a lot of pushback to having the English Qurbana. And a lot of these parents think that it's always been the English Qurbana for centuries. But that's not the case.
Less than 100 years.
Yeah. And so whenever there's transition, there's going to be some challenge and difficulty. But I guess the transition from Syriac to Malayalam was a lot tougher.
Right.
Because just for centuries it was in Syriac.
Yeah. I'm wonder, just like using my imagination, there must have been people like you who in the 1950s were excited. Okay, I can finally understand this Qurbana in a personal level. And like you just said, now there's similar pushback with, do we do weekly English Qurbana? Do we do it monthly? And when it's not offered, then this generation of youth may also not feel as welcomed into it. That's interesting history, especially to see it kind of repeat itself in such a short period of time. I had no idea about that. I think kind of coming back to your discernment to becoming a priest, most people may not know this, but you're the first American-born Syro-Malabar Catholic priest. And for me, I look at that and I'm really excited because it opens up a whole door for youth to be more involved and more engaged because you're like them. You grew up where they grew up. You speak the language. You watch the sports, all the things. How have you seen that impact your personal ministry and connection to not just the younger generations, but other people who may not understand Malayalam or have difficulty connecting to the Indianness of the Syro-Malabar Catholic Church?
Yeah, it's been such a blessing. I mean, for me especially, to be able to minister to people who sound like me, who have the same upbringing as me and stuff. So it's been a blessing. I don't know the exact stats. It's not like the moment I came to the church that 1,000 young adults started to come the next day. Yeah. But I'm sure it does help for them to have someone like them at the altar, preaching to them, someone who can walk with them, someone who understands their struggles, the cultural struggles growing up in a Malayali household, American culture, this kind of double identity. Yeah. And I don't have a solution, but we just kind of struggle together and the Lord will get us through it.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. I spent a lot of time thinking about this third culture experience for many people, but specifically for Malayali Christians, where in America we're Indian at home, we're American at school and work. And then specifically when it comes to church, there's another divide, whether it's Pentecostal, Orthodox, Marthoma, Catholic. Everyone has a similar experience that they go to an Indian church and then they try to explain their church to their friends, and there's a lot of confusion. How have you personally, in your individual faith here in America, how have you kind of wrestled with that? Is it easier since you're a priest? Is it just as difficult trying to explain? Is there a wrestling within you?
Yeah. There's always a tension, and it's always something that I bring in prayer. It's like because we essentially have two communities in our churches. We have those who are English speaking, those who are Malayalam speaking, and we don't want to sideline either group. And so I've actually been living in India for the past 3 years doing like a master's degree, a licentiate degree. And I've learned so much about like Malayali culture, and I've had so much appreciation and admiration for our parents who migrated here and just the struggles and the difficulties. And despite trying to be on their toes, they're also supporting their parishes. And so they built our churches. This is everything for them. This is their home. And I don't want to like take that away from them.
Yeah.
So for me, like somehow moving towards something more bilingual, like, we got to adjust, they got to adjust.
Yeah.
And so there is a struggle. And just culturally too, I guess liturgy is one, but sometimes the bigger struggle is like more in like administration and a parish council.
Yeah.
For St. Thomas Christians, we have the Pudiogam system.
Yeah.
And so, if people are talking in Malayalam, the English speakers, can they understand that? And sometimes it's a little more difficult. Like if we say only speak in English, then sometimes, the older generation, they can't express themselves as much. And so it's challenging. It's challenging. It's tough.
Have you, and maybe some of the other younger Achens who were born in the U.S., have you guys thought of potentially what the future of the Syro-Malabar Catholic Church in the West looks like? I only ask this because this is something that I question a lot as well, is the longevity or the lifespan, honestly, of ethnic churches that are homogenous with their language, with their culture. I often think, what's going to happen in 10 years? If no one's being welcomed into this church from the outside, can this same system still work the same? And of course, there's new priests from Syro-Malabar Catholic Church specifically, but it's kind of a worry of mine. Like, will these churches last? I was just at a Pentecostal convention, and we're seeing the older generation kind of hand the baton, and there's a few of the younger generation who are rising up. But again, I'm like, how can these ethnic homogenous churches thrive in 10 years? Is it multilingual? Is it giving youth more of a voice? What's your perspective on this?
Yeah. My take is God brought us here. God will sustain us, and we just need to continue to seek first His kingdom. And there's going to be a lot of growing pains and challenges, but we really need to start recognizing that this church is not just for Malayalis. That the Lord wants us to evangelize.
Yeah.
And that's not just the duty of the Latin Church. That's for any Catholic, for any Christian. And so we do have some parishes where there are people who are not Malayali who come to our liturgies, people who have even joined our church, people who have been baptized in our church who are not Malayali. And even in India too, we have Syro-Malabar Catholics from Tamil Nadu, from Maharashtra, from North India.
Wow.
So we have to realize that the Syro-Malabar Church is not a Malayali church either. Like there are people who don't know a word of Malayalam in India who are very much Syro-Malabar. In fact, we do have a Syro-Malabar bishop from Tamil Nadu. He's full Tamil. And so we share in that universality in which we're not limited to a particular language or a particular ethnicity.
Yeah.
And so, but it's not going to be easy because I guess it's more of an issue of ecclesiology. Like if people just think this is a Malayalam church and the language we use is kind of like that, then if someone sees someone who's not Malayalam, why are they here? They should go to that church down the street.
Yeah.
But this is a Syro-Malabar Catholic church. We follow this liturgy. We're not limited to any particular ethnicity. And so we really have to kind of understand what it means to be a church in terms of like ecclesiology, and that language is really important too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a reaction to all this is that it is directly impacting people's ecclesiology. What, the type of church they want to raise their kids in, where do they want to get married, their interaction with the Malayali church has formed them to believe one way or another about the church. And I get discouraged sometimes because I'll interact with people from various traditions that grow up in the Malayalam only service, and maybe they weren't ever exposed to an English or a youth service, and they end up either leaving that tradition or going to a different church. And it's not a bad thing to go to a different church. That's not my qualm, but it's frustrating when the church leadership could have really had a large impact on youth. I think geographically it really impacts people when there's less Malayalis, when there's less formation focused on the smaller communities, so then people are more prone to leave. I kind of tell people, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen, kind of what you said, that God brought us here and he'll continue to guide us in the best way. It may not be our specific way, but I trust that he'll care for us in the same way, like you said. Speaking more specifically about the St. Thomas Christian traditions, this is something I've been focusing on for the last many years. How does it feel genuinely to kind of carry this tradition onward here on a land that isn't where St. Thomas landed and isn't where the traditions began early on in Kerala, southwestern India? How does it feel to be a carrier of this tradition in a really impactful way?
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. People see me Indian, so probably Hindu, Muslim, Jain,
Yeah.
Sikh, but Catholic, Christian.
Do you ever get asked when you converted from Hinduism?
Yeah, definitely. There have been moments when people ask, like, when who got baptized, like
Yeah.
your parents, your grandparents, and we've been Christian for many centuries,
Yeah.
right? So it is a unique experience, and I guess the St. Thomas Christians, we add like this unique, I guess, flavor or color to the church, the universal church. Like John Paul II would speak about the different Eastern churches or all the churches as like different colors or different colored stones in the mosaic. Like, these little pebbles with different colors that when you zoom out, it's this beautiful image.
Yeah.
And if all of the pebbles were the same color, there wouldn't be much of an image, right?
Yeah.
And the beauty of a mosaic is that you have these different colors working together and it shows the beauty of this image. And so trying to be fully authentically ourselves and retaining our tradition, because that's a huge part. Like being in America, it's very easy just to assimilate to Latin, right? But that's not what the church desires, especially at Vatican II. The church wants the Eastern churches to preserve our identity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. Have you seen more youth like becoming more engaged after they've learned about their history? Because for me, I've begun learning more about this history. I've had the opportunity to teach it a little bit, and it seems like it's been in the background for a lot of younger people, maybe under the age of 30. And once they hear it again or hear it from a different voice, it energizes them. Have you seen that at all? That when they hear maybe outside of the Qurbana, like, hey, here's what happened at the Synod of the Emperor and the Kunang Kudisha Satyam. Like, have you experienced that where people are like, hey, that's actually my history. That's me that you're speaking about.
Yeah. No, that's definitely an inspiration I had a couple of years ago. It's like a lot of our kids don't know our history. Like, how did we become Christians? Like, how did we like reach here? Like, why do we have our Syro-Malabar churches? And one of my friends, Dr. J.C. Joseph, she wrote a book called The Struggle for Identity Among Syro-Malabar Catholics. And that goes throughout our entire history from an American-born perspective.
Yeah.
And that book really transformed my understanding of our history. And like, I try to give like history talks to our kids at conferences. And it seems boring, like on paper, but it's one of like the most like engaging talks. Like they love it. They're so like glued. They're like want to like, so this happened and that happened and then what happened here. And so because we all have like friends from the Orthodox Church, Jacobite Church, Martham, it's like, how did this happen? And just learning about the different divisions in history. At this moment, this split happened. And then it's really interesting. And I think we need to teach our history. We need to explain just how all this development and stuff happened over centuries.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to meet Dr. JC 2 years ago, and she gave me a copy, or I got a copy of her book. And after reading it, I had the similar experience. You touched on something that I would love to maybe talk a little bit more about, is the denominational or the difference between the traditions. Maybe for the older generation, it was really important to keep these divisions. I come from a Pentecostal background, and I have cousins who are Martham. One of my best friends is Indian Orthodox. And for our generation, it's not as important to keep the division as it was for those who came before us. I go to Qurbana at my friends' churches. I get to experience other traditions. What do you think is a potential way forward? Because maybe people are not comfortable going to Qurbana, but I know for a fact that they have friends who are Orthodox or Catholic or Martham or whatever it is. It's something that really boggles my mind. Like what could happen? Like, is there a way forward that we seek unity? Is it ecumenism? Is there something that we could really establish as St. Thomas Christians in the West? I don't have an answer for this. I have my own ideas, but I'm curious from your perspective, being in the Syro-Malabar Catholic Church, like, do you have a hope for the future for the St. Thomas Christians?
Yeah. So when I was in India for the past 3 years, I was doing higher studies, and we lived with different students from the Orthodox, Yakuba,
Oh, wow.
Martoma. Even there was someone from the Pentecostal tradition too,
Wow.
and it was just so beautiful. Like living together, like we played sports together, had meals
Yeah.
together, and just I guess friendship is
Mm.
a huge way in which we can just grow in that oneness.
Yeah.
Um, I guess there's different approaches in ecumenism, but I guess just learning about each other, because there's a lot more similarities than differences,
Yeah.
probably. And so we have this common thread of being St. Thomas Christians,
Mm.
and many of us don't know how close or how much we keep those traditions too.
Yeah.
Some of us have lost some of those traditions that other denominations are doing a better job keeping. But there are certain things, for example, like the St. Thomas Christians, when the Portuguese came and they observed the St. Thomas Christians, they described them as lovers of fasting, like just during their Lenten periods, which is not just the Great Lent, but like 3 days fast, 8 days fast, 15 days fast, 25. Like they would go vegan essentially. No meat, no fish, no eggs, no dairy. And then throughout the year, Wednesday and Fridays were fasting days. And so in America, we love fast food. And so having that fasting tradition, that spirituality, that asceticism, like rediscovered, can be such a beautiful thing that we can offer as St. Thomas Christians to the American context. Just because like to think about not eating meat on a day is like unheard of, right? But to know that it is possible, like, and doing it for like spiritual motivation, like motives too. But I think in terms of, I guess that oneness, we do things like basketball tournaments.
Right.
We have ecumenical Christmas events, but maybe just talking about those essentials of our faith and how we can witness that faith too in public. Because there are a lot of groups and stuff that meet together, but I guess just bringing the faith to the forefront.
I love looking at the similarities because there's so many more similarities and differences. Like you mentioned, with not just the Great Lent, but like Mundanomba, other different fasting periods. It's not always the same across each tradition, but people take it with the same importance. And so whether it's in the Indian Orthodox Church, the Yakuba Church, either Catholic churches, there's such an importance and reverence that I think is handed down from our older generations. Just from my experience, I've noticed that basically all of us grew up very similarly, with our parents or grandparents up early in the morning praying, family prayer at the end of the day, praying before meals, importance of going to the church, whether it's Pentecostal, Orthodox, Catholic, going to the church building is very important. And so as I've been able to discover the insides of these churches, how do these services or Qurbanas operate? Again, there's so many more similarities, but the hindrance is, they're different, so we can't go in there. And I've faced not a lot of pushback, but a lot of kind of questioning and intense curiosity, you could say, about me going to these churches. And that's not for everybody. Not everyone needs to jump around and see these other churches. But I think what I've discovered is just that there's, through friendship, through communing with one another, that I don't have to see them as my Syro-Malabar Catholic friend or my Malankara Orthodox friend. It's like, here's my friend who is a faithful follower of Christ, who receives the Holy Eucharist and attends this church. And again, maybe that's not for everyone, but it's helped me view people truly as brothers and sisters in Christ, rather than a independent person who goes to a denominational church. It's interesting because there's a lot of fights that can happen within churches, apart from each other. And it's discouraging, but I think our generation genuinely wants to be more one than separated. I would love to just get your perspective a little bit about these Qurbana Explained videos. And I bring this up because prior to me knowing you or any of the other American Achens, I found these videos somehow. And I think they came out 3 years ago. And this was right when I was discovering a lot of these details of the St. Thomas Christian churches. So watching your videos enlightened me and taught me so much. How did the idea for those videos come up? And have you seen some fruit from that outside of me telling you right now?
Yeah. So I guess it started with our catechism director, our Sunday school director, asking me, hey, can you like make some like videos about the Qurbana? And I guess he just wanted me to like put my iPhone on a stand and just talk about the Qurbana.
PowerPoint slide.
But then, I was like, let's try to make this more interesting. How can we really make it engaging? And like, especially nowadays, if you put out a video, it has to be high quality. Otherwise, no one's going to watch it.
Right.
And so my friends, they have a video agency called Loud Science.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to them, and they're all like Syro-Malabar people too. They're Catholics. And so they took up this project with me, and they were the masterminds behind it. And they're just so creative, and they made it really engaging. We try to reach out to like, the audience was like a middle school kind of guy. I'm glad you were able to encounter it.
Are you smarter than a fifth grader?
But they just did a great job, and it was a fun project too.
Yeah.
But there have been people, like especially like as I travel, do like youth stuff like in different countries. Like I'd say, you're the guy from the Qurbana Explained.
Yeah.
And so it's always a beautiful project, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I'm glad we can do it.
I love seeing initiatives like that, because when I watch that video, not only is it encouraging for me, but I also think about the people that didn't have this, and maybe that was a reason why they left the church. And so not focusing too much on that reality, but the positive that hopefully people are learning from this and taking ownership of like, yeah, I know what that is. I know the different details of the madbaha and the inside of a church. Like, because now when I go, I'm like, hey, this is what this part is, and it's encouraging for me. So thank you on behalf of everyone who's seen those videos for putting those out. Just kind of as we close this conversation, I would love to just hear a bit more of maybe your hope for the future. There's 3 new priests were just brought into the Syro-Malabar Catholic Church just in the last 3 months. And I'm sure there's a few in seminary as we speak. Like, what's your hope, not just for the priests, but for the Syro-Malabar Catholic Church, specifically here in the Eparchy of Chicago?
Yeah, I mean, very simply, I want people to love Jesus and love the church. But more specifically, I guess there are a lot of people from my generation who, I guess, have drifted away from the Syro-Malabar Church. Usually, the trend is that we'll have them until 12th grade, and then afterwards, they may come back for Christmas, Easter, parish feasts. A few will stay back.
Yeah.
But my hope is that we give people an opportunity to encounter the beauty of the church, and we want them to take ownership of the church. We want them to love the church.
Yeah.
And a big thing that we experience is that, because our churches are like usually in a different location. It's not usually within walking distance. It's not 5 minutes away. Typically, our churches are like, a 20-minute drive away.
Yeah.
Our liturgies take a little bit longer. And so a lot of our young people find it inconvenient to come to their Syro-Malabar churches.
Mm-hmm.
You usually have to get up early. You have to dress up, and after there's always the fellowship, the conversation, and sometimes you get like questions about your state in life.
Right.
Why aren't you married yet?
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't you having kids yet? Why aren't you getting a job? So there's a lot of questions, and I have more sympathy. I understand where that Malayali culture comes from. Like it's out of love, hopefully. I'm trying to be positive.
Yeah.
But a lot of our young people it's really inconvenient going to a Syro-Malabar church. And, people have complained about time. It's a little bit longer. And so I've tried to like reduce the time. I've tried to shorten down the homily a little bit.
Yeah.
But people are like, can you make it a little bit shorter? And then it'll just keep, can you make it an hour? Then once you get it to an hour, can you make it 45 minutes?
Yeah.
And like, it's like, how short do you want me to go? And I realized, I can't move their house close to the church either. Like there's always going to be that driving distance. And so instead of making it more convenient for them, which there's so much you can do, I think the path we have to take is helping them understand that this is worth being inconvenienced for. Like it's worth the drive. It's worth the longer liturgy. It's worth the awkward questions because I love the church. Right? This is my church. This is who I am. I'm Syro-Malabar, and this is my home. This is my family. Yeah, we have issues. We don't get along all the time, but this is my home. This is my family. This is my liturgical rite. So helping people reach that point where I'm willing to be inconvenienced for this, and it's worth it.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. And I totally agree across the board, 100%. One final question that I think is worth highlighting that we can't skip over. There potentially has never been a Syro-Malabar Catholic Achen to sit down with someone who is from a Pentecostal tradition as Malayalis sit down together and discuss what we've discussed. And I think that's important, that maybe people seeing this are confused, maybe they're mad. We'll get comments in the comment section about it. But I would love if you could just touch a little bit on some of the highlights of the Catholic Church, because when I try to explain things to people, it's like, why are you talking to Catholics? Why are you going to mass? Why are you doing all this stuff? Because they believe X, they worship whatever. If you could just, in any amount of time, give a brief explanation of Intercession of Saints to the viewer who is not from a liturgical tradition. Intercession of Saints, the Transubstantiation in the Holy Eucharist, because I think when people have a real description and education about it, then maybe they can have a better understanding, rather than just saying, oh, they worship Mary. Oh, they think it turns into the body and blood. I think for us to discuss this would be really important for anybody watching.
Yeah. So intercessory prayer is very biblical. We see, for example, in Scripture, the centurion who has a servant who's ill, who's begging the Lord to heal him. And he's like, hey, I'm not worthy for you to enter my roof, but your word enough, Lord, is enough to heal him. The centurion's not the one who's sick. It's his servant who's sick, but he is asking on behalf of him. And so the Lord is moved by his faith, and that servant is healed. The servant didn't see Jesus, didn't talk to Jesus, but that centurion's faith, he interceded in that moment.
Yeah.
And so we see that Jesus is moved by faith of many people. The centurion's just one of them. In the same way, I have prayer requests. I ask, hey, please pray for me. Someone's sick. Someone's having a surgery. So we ask people for prayers all the time. And for us Catholics, we ask the saints who we believe to be in heaven, who are experiencing beatific vision, and to ask them for their prayers too. So that's the basis of the intercession of the saints, is that there are people in heaven who are able to pray for us, just like we ask for people here on earth to pray for us.
Yeah.
Transubstantiation, the basis for that is that at the Last Supper, Jesus took the bread and he said, this is my body. He didn't say, this is like my body, or this is a reminder of my body. He said, this is my body. He took the chalice filled with wine. He said, this is my blood. And so the teaching of transubstantiation is that the bread and wine become the body and blood of Jesus, though the properties or the accidents of bread and wine remain. So it still smells, tastes, feels like bread and wine, but it becomes the body and blood of Jesus.
Yeah.
But, well, we can't see it, and this is a mystery of our faith. It is a spirit that gives life, but the flesh is of no avail. This is something that our human senses, our human sciences can't reveal this to us, but it's by the Spirit, enlightened by faith, that we can understand that Jesus is there in the Eucharist. Jesus is there in the precious blood.
Right.
So that's the teaching of the Eucharist. And John 6 is the passage where Catholics love to go to, and where Jesus says, my flesh is true food, my blood is true drink. Unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you don't have life within you. And It's a powerful passage because eventually there are people who are like, this saying is hard. Who can accept it? And Jesus didn't clarify, saying, hey, by the way, I didn't actually mean this is not this. Like, this is just a symbol. He let them go. John 6:6. They no longer followed him. Jesus didn't run after them saying, hey, by the way,
this is what
you had a misunderstanding. He doubles down. He looks to his disciples, the people he chose, his apostles, and he says, do you guys want to leave too? Jesus is not going to compromise on this teaching. And it's Peter who says, to whom shall we go? You have the words of everlasting life. And so John 6 is very powerful. First, as Catholics, because we see Jesus says, I'm the bread of life. My flesh is true food. My blood is true drink. And so we find the foundation for the Eucharist, a lot of it in John 6. And that the Eucharist is the body, blood, soul, divinity of Jesus, that we receive Jesus wholly, entirely in the Eucharist. It is not bread. It is not wine. It is the body and blood of Christ, though it has the properties of bread and wine. But in faith, we believe that this is Jesus.
I think what you just described is so important for people to understand, especially when it comes to real presence, various views of communion, Holy Eucharist. That's what got me most interested in first. When I was in seminary, hearing about this, I was confused. I was put off by it. But the more that I've studied it, the more that I've experienced these things, not receiving myself, not as a Catholic, but being in the room, it's transformational to see people receive the Holy Eucharist. And though I don't completely understand these things yet, I have such a deep admiration for all that you've described today. So thank you so much for being here today, joining me on this podcast. And I think conversations like these need to happen more often for people to have maybe a new imagination of what's possible.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to see more videos like this, please like, subscribe, and comment below. And if you want to support this work, check out the link in my bio.